Okay, good morning. So we are in the Gemara and the Mishnah on Chavav Amud Aleph. Today we're going to be focused on Chavav Amud Beis. Says the Mishnah, Zav Shara Kari V'nida Shapolta Shechodera Mishhamesh Shara Sadam Nida. You have a situation where you have a Zav who sees Kari, meaning he's already a Tameh Daraisa, and now he's seeing Kari. And the question is about Tfilas Ezra. We already brought this Gemara up initially on Chavav Amud Beis, if you remember on the bottom. So a Zav who sees Kari V'nida Shapolta Shechodera, and a Nida who has now also a Tumah of Kari, but she's already been a Nida. Shemesha Shara said Nida, and the situation of Shemesha Shara Nida, we're assuming here that she is therefore going to be tamei from Kari before she sees the dam nida. The halach in all three cases is tzrichin zvila. Rabbi Yehuda paiter. Fact Gemara Bailu. What do you mean? About Kari sharad ziva Rabbi Yehuda. What is the halach going to be? You have somebody who's a Baal Kari now, and now it becomes a zav. The Rabbi Yehuda mahu. What is the halach going to be according to Rabbi Yehuda? He part the Rabbi Yehuda hasam bizav sharad Kari. Dimekar lav bar tfilo havim. Right? Are we going to say that according to Rabbi Yehuda, when is Rabbi Yehuda pattering up a person? When is Rabbi Yehuda doing that? Is Rabbi Yehuda is doing that when you have a situation of a zav who's a zav, meaning he's already tamei daraisa, and now he's seeing Kari. So the meikar lav bar tfilahu. So then he was not considered a bar tfilah. He was not considered somebody who was able to have a tfilah already from before. And therefore, now that he's seeing Kari, Rabbi Yehuda is pattering him, and therefore he would not be able to go to the mikvah. Or sorry, not able. He would not be required to go to the mikvah. About Kari Shara Ziva, but if somebody's about Kari first, and now he's seeing a flaw that makes him a zav, then may kara bar tzvilahu, then mechayev. Then maybe he would say that such a person would be mechayev. So again, about Kari Shara Ziva Rabbi Yehuda Mau. Keep out Rabbi Yehuda Hasan Bezav Shara Kari the Meikar Lav Bar Tfilahu. About Kari Shara Ziva the Meikar Bar Tfilahu. So then Mechayev Aidim Alosh. Maybe it doesn't make a difference. You just say that for Rabbi Yehuda we are having a question because the Mishnah told us about a case of a Zav Shara Kari. So he was already really tamei a Tumat Zav, and now he sees Kari. So Rabbi Yehuda's paita we understand. But in the vice versa cases are questions. The Gemara have a simple answer for you, said the Gemara. Tashma, what's the last case there in the Mishnah? Mishameshes Barasanida. What's the case of Mishameshes? She's being tamei of Kari before she becomes tamei of Dam Nida. So such a situation is exactly our situation, right? We have Kari first, and then you have the Tumah of Ziva, you have the Tumah of Nida, you have something else that comes in. So that's the Gemara. So the perfect proof. Tashma, Mishameshes, Barasanida, Tzricha Tzvila, Rabbi Yehuda Paiter. You see Rabbi Yehuda is being Pater. Mishameshes, Barasanida, Kebal Kari, Shiraz Ziva. It's exactly the same situation as our situation over here. Mishameshes, Barasanida is the same exact thing as the Bal Kari, Shiraz Ziva. It's the same thing. V'kapat Rabbi Yehuda, and since Rabbi Yehuda is patering Mishameshes Barasanida, he's going to be patering by a Kari Shiraz Ziva. Shemamin on the Marsh is a good raya. And the Gemara then concludes and says, "Tana Reb Chia behedya bal Kari shira ziva tzarich tvila." We have a brayso that says very clearly that a bal Kari that sees ziva needs a tvila of Rabbi Yehuda paiter. And Yehuda in this case says it very clear. So we don't have to be medayik if Shemeshes barasa nida. Here we have a specific situation. Rabbi Yehuda literally said this straight out. Hadron Allah misha mesu hadron misha mesu. Okay, new parak tfilas hashachar. Right, we have a new exciting parak to discuss here, which is going to be discussing Plag Mincha and all the other fun stuff that we remember from the beginning on that base in the big tesis over there. We're going to get into some of that again today. Tfilas HaShachar Ad Chatzos, says the Mishnah. How long do you have to daven Shachris until? You have until Chatzos. Now let's assume for the purposes of our discussion today that we're talking about a 12-hour day. So basically from 6 to 6 is the day. And when we're saying you have until Shachris, you have until Chatzos, it means you have until 6. All right, you have until 6. I'm sorry. You have until 6. From 6, you have from 6. We're talking about a 12-hour day. You have essentially until 12 to be able to daven shachris. No, you don't have until 6 hours in a day. You have until 4 hours in a day. You have until 10. Why? Because of the fact that he has an earlier period for everything. So that's a mincha. Ado Erev. So according to the Tanakama, you can have mincha until 6, right? Until the evening. Gudayim ad plag mincha until plag. We're gonna have to explain more about that soon. Tfilas Erev ein lo keva, right? So Ma'ariv doesn't have a specific time. V'shal Musaf and Kal Yom. And to daven Musaf, you could daven all day. Gudayim ad zayin shas, until 7 hours. So according to the Mishnah, we see that there are various time periods that are put into place for the various davenings that we have to do. And each one now we're going to try to source and understand. The Taisvus here, Taisvus of Tfilas HaShachar and Chatzos, just Mincha Erev, all of these various things. So Taisvus asks, V'im timer amalek tani gab b'tfilas ha-mincha kol hayom, k'may gab b'tfilas ha-musafin. Taisvus asks, why is it that my musaf we say it's all day, but by mincha we don't say it's all day? The Taisvus says, V'yesh lam d'zman musafin hu kol hayom. Right? By musaf it really is all day. I feel shachris. You're able to do the musaf right away in the beginning of the day, even from shachris. Shari karbonis yachal hakav miyad achar tamid. Once the carbon tamish shachris was brought, you could bring the carbon musaf. You don't have to wait. Im kain gabetfilas musaf and yachal ispal miyad men abayker. So when the Tanakhama said that tfilas musaf and the kol hayom, he means it literally. As long as the carbon tamish shachris was brought, you could do musaf all day. So you do have all day for Musaf. It's not like mincha. Masha'en came mincha. But mincha, you really cannot do. You cannot do mincha until Mishay Shoyes, right? As we're going to see, until it's 12:30, you cannot start mincha. The afagav loy litzli inish slusa demusafim b'klasha kamais. Even though we say that a person cannot be davening musaf in the first hours of the day, right? Even though we say that sometimes a person shouldn't be davening musaf in the early hours of the day, that's in the situation of a yachid, etc. As an additional point, this is why tefillah of mincha is talking here before the tefillah of musaf. All right, so we had two different points in Taisus. One point in Taisus was, why is it that tefillas musafin is given a moniker that it's all day, but tefillas mincha is not? Taisus, because that's literally mincha, it cannot be done all day. Mincha can only start by 12:30, but musaf literally can be done all day because of the fact that musaf is right, a Musaf was kosher all day, but mincha is literally not kosher until 12:30. So that's why one. And the second question was, why is mincha talked about before Musaf? In the normal order of a day, you're going to be doing Musaf before you do mincha. So why do we have it the opposite? The Taisus is answering that the reason is because mincha is taught there. Mincha you do every single day, but Musaf you do not. Musaf you only have special times of the week, of the year to do it. So therefore Musaf is talked about last. All right, that's the mission. Says the Gemara. I'll ask you a stira. You just told me that you could daven shachris until chatzai. But the truth is that the mitzvah of davening, we already know, is with nates. Kadeshi Ismach Gula Tefillah. Rashi over here, he says that the mitzvah of Kriya Shema is in Manetz Achama. But what we're trying to say is that if a person is davening Kriya Shema with the nates, and meaning he's being semech geula to tefillah, he's end up saying Shemana Esrei with the nates, right? Before nates he says the Shema, with the nates he says the Shemana Esrei. So what are you talking about that you have until Chatzos? The mitzvah was the light, but the mitzvah is you could do it all day, right? So what is the Gemara's answer on that? Says the Gemara. Right, you're supposed to be davening shachris with the nates in order to be samak gula to tefillah. So you see that you can only daven shachris in the very early morning, and you do not have until chatzos to do so. And you're going to end up davening during the day, right? Because you did the shema right before the nates, and you're doing the shemana esrei right after the nates. So you end up davening during the day. Says the Gemara, Kitanya hi levasikin. That what we said before, that it's a mitzvah to do like the Vasikin. Rashi over here calls them the Makamidim mitzvahs, Magdidim mitzvahs. Sometimes he says it's the Mechabev in the mitzvahs. the people who love the mitzvahs or they're makdim to do the mitzvahs early, whichever it is, the basic premise is that the vasikin are those that are people that do mitzvahs early because they very much love the mitzvahs, but that's not the halacha. Who davens vasikin? It's like rare people. It's not something that's a requirement. But it's a mitzvah, sure. But it doesn't mean that one must do so. When we say mitzvah, so it's not that the mitzvah, and otherwise it's not the mitzvah. As we say, we pass like Rabbi Shua. We do pass that you can say the Shema all the way into the middle of the day, in the morning. Because Rabbi Yochanan says that the Vasikim were the ones who would finish the Shemana Esrei along with the sunrise. So then the Gemara says, okay, fine. So you explained to me now that this idea of the Vasikin is not a steer to what I said in the Mishnah, that that's just a mitzvah for those who are really big idealists, but not fundamental or requirement. So therefore, if that's the case, then we're going back to what we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, which is that you have for Shachris until Chatzos. So let's ask the following question. It says the Gemara, "V'kuli alma Chatzos v'suloi." So is that the true that you have, according to all the other opinions now, that you only have until Chatzos, and then after that you can't daven any longer? But we have a memra that we understand doesn't seem to suggest that. It seems to suggest that you have more time to daven shachris. What is that? Somebody who forgot to daven ma'ariv mispal b'shachris shtayim. He's able to daven two shachrises. Shachris mispal b'minchas shtayim. Somebody who forgot shachris is able to daven two minchas. So what does that seem to indicate? That seems to indicate that you have all day to daven, right? If you could daven shachris until chatzos, but if you forgot you could daven mincha two times, it sounds like then you become your shachris. Then how do you say for shachris you only have until chatzos? It sounds much more likely that you have all day for shachris. If the evening prayer is only meant for the evening, but if you forgot you could daven two chakras, well, it sounds like you have a lot more time in the evening to just daven it. This is the Gemara's question. The Gemara answers, huh? It's not the same thing. Okay, we'll have to see some more about it. Says the Gemara, Kula Yoma Matzliva Azal. The truth is, you have all day to daven. However, Ad Chatzos Yavle Eskar Tefila Bismana, Mikan Ve'el Eskar Tefila Yavle Eskar Tefila Bismana Lo Yavle. Truth is, you have from the tefillah of Shachris, you have all day to daven it, but there's a difference between schar tefillah and schar tefillah bizman. First, schar tefillah, you're right, you could do it all day. The truth is, you do have all day to do it. When the Mishnah was saying shachar at chatzos, the Mishnah was trying to get across the point of how long do you have to daven Shachris and get the schar for Shachris Bisman. That you only have until Chatzos, but you can always daven, as we've said before. A person should daven all day. We'll just point out that we had the same exact line here before, right? You remember the Mishnah on Tesama Bays. The Mishnah told us that the machlokes about when you can say Shema until, and we said that the opinion of Rabbi Shua is that you have until 3 hours. But the Mishnah concluded Mikan ve'elach. From then on, after 3 hours, like hifsid, you're not losing out. It's like a person who's reading the Torah. And the question was, what did that mean? And what did the Gemara end up saying? The Gemara ended up saying on Yom Beis, the Gemara said that the Gemara said, yeah, that's what Rav Chizda meant. What does it mean? Like hifsid brachas. In other words, even though this man of Kriyash Mashal Shachris is until 3 hours into the day, if you're saying it afterwards, lo hifsid, you can still say Shema, you can still say the brachas. What you're not getting is you're not getting the Kriyash Shema b'aynasa, right? You're not getting the Kriyash Shema in its right time, but you're still getting at least the schar of Adam HaKari b'Torah. You're still getting the schar. Somebody's like reading just anywhere else in the Torah. So not less than that. So the same is coming out with the Shemana Esrei. You have it till Chatzos, but yes, if you woke up really, really late, you can still daven even after Chatzos. Not an issue with that, but you're getting Schar Tefillah. You're just not getting Schar Tefillah Bismana. Iboilu says the Gemara question. So now that we got into this idea, that's the halach, of course. So now that we get into the fact, it's not an encouragement to go wake up late, right? Because you're not getting tired tefillah bismana. But yes, a person can daven all day. So now the Gemara asks. Now that we just got into this question about a person who forgot their davening can make up for it at a later davening, we noticed that in the brayso that we just quoted, it talked about chakras and about Ma'ariv. What it didn't discuss was mincha. So now we want to discuss mincha. Says the Gemara, I'll ask you a question. Tov lo yispala mincha ma'ashi yispala arvis beis. When someone forgot to daven mincha, are they able to daven two Ma'arivs? Imtim tzalem tov lo yispala arvis mispala chakras beis. Maybe you want to say, look, when somebody forgot to daven Ma'ariv, they're able to daven two chakras. Why? Mishum dechad yaimahu, because it's considered one day, because it was the evening and it was a day, and then it was considered one day. You remember what I said here on Daf Beis Amud Aleph? On Daf Beis Amud Aleph, we had the question of why did we start on Amos Karnes Shema Ba'arav, and when did we start saying the Shema in the evening time? And the question of the Gemara was, why are we talking about evening and not talking about day? And one of the answers of the Gemara was because in Shema it says it talks about the evening before it talks about the day. And the other potential answer was it says it talks about the evening and the day. And I mentioned that quickly that there is a very controversial Rashbam on Vayer Vayvag Yom Echad. He doesn't understand Vayer Vayvag Yom Echad as the way the common understanding is. Rather, Vayer Vayvag Yom Echad meant it was the evening, it was the morning, and then it was one day. In other words, day one finished not in the evening. Day one finishes in the morning after. So Hashem creates the world whatever time He created the world. Then it was the evening, and then it was the morning, and then the day was over. That one day is now over. So the day starts in the morning and let's say 6 a.m., and until the 6 a.m. the next day, that's considered one day. And this is a very controversial Rashbam because that would mean for the Ibn Ezra, who was in London when he wrote his Igeris Shabbos against the Rashbam, it would mean that this is absolutely heresy because what it fundamentally is bringing out is that what? Is that you are going to be starting Shabbos not at 6 p.m., but you'll be starting Shabbos at 6 a.m., and that can't be. All right, we'll discuss another Rashbam later, maybe today. Okay, so continues the Gemara. The Gemara wants to know if somebody forgot Mincha, are they able to make up for it with two Ma'arivs? Maybe you say no, it's one day, and now we get into the next day, and then you shouldn't be able to have a Tashlumin. Avalacha, Tefillah B'Makom Karban, right? Tefillah is in place of the Karbanis. And so therefore, since the time has passed, the carbon is finished, you don't have a chance to do another one. Since davening is for Rachman, for the Rebbeinu Shalom, so so long as you daven, right, it works, right? So long as you're asking for Rachman, it's fine. This is the Gemara's question. What is the answer? It says the Gemara, Tashma, bring a ride, Amar Avuna Bar Yehuda, Bar Yitzchak, Bar Yechanan. Right, so the Gemara brings a raya from a member from Rabbi Yechanan that said as follows: If somebody forgot to daven mincha, they daven two Ma'ariv. So that's very clear, right? We don't have any issues of saying Avar Yarmi, the day has passed, so the carbon is bottle, and therefore you lost it out. So that would be a very clear what? A very clear proof that if somebody forget mincha, they can daven to Ma'ariv. Basically, the Gemara, really? Me'uvas lo yuchal l'skain, v'chisaron lo yuchal limonas. Have a brayso that says, based on the pasuk Koheles, right, that the crooked cannot be made straight. Something that's missing cannot be fixed. So what does that mean? Me'uvas lo yuchal l'skain. What is the situation if somebody's me'uvas lo yuchal l'skain that is not able to be fixed? What's that? Zeh shabatel kriyas shema shel arvis, kriyas shema shel shachris. It's tefillah shel arvis, or it's tefillah shel shachris. What is the situations that we're talking about when we say Movus is lo yuchal liskain? If someone's matal kriyashma of the arvis or kriyashma of shachris, or he misses out on tefillah shel arvis or tefillah shel shachris, so you are on an unfortunate situation. It cannot be fixed. Me'uvas is a crooked. Lo yuchal liskain cannot be made straight. The Gemara is asking. So you're telling me that you have all this ability to do tashlumin. We have a pasuk in Koheles that we're darshaning. That means that somebody who is crooked cannot be made straight. Is somebody who missed shachris, he missed arvis, he missed kriyashba. They can't make it up. So what are you telling me that you have the ability to do all this tashlumin? And you cannot make up what was lost. If there was an opportunity to do a mitzvah and they were counting people to come do the mitzvah and you didn't go with them, so it's over. So what are we saying? Right? It sounds like you don't have the ability to do tashlumin. It's not a mincha question. It's a question of all tashlumin. So the more answer, this Bryce is not a question. Why not? Because this Bryce, when it says it's a mu'uvas lo yuchal iskan, is somebody who didn't do chakras shema or didn't daven chakras, that is talking about shebitel b'mezid. Here we're talking about a situation where somebody deliberately didn't daven. If you deliberately didn't daven, then you do not have the ability to make it up. If you knew the time, you saw the clock, and you said, "Nah, I'll do 2 minchas." No, you don't get 2 minchas. You get 2 minchas if you were very busy. For example, somebody was very busy. Yeah, he had a mitzvah to do. He's part of min mitzvah. He was very busy with something, or he went to sleep super late. Right, he's a big einus. So he slept. He overslept. He was working. He had something to do that he wasn't able to daven for whatever legitimate reason that he didn't daven. So then you have time. Then you have the ability to do 2 minchas. Then you have the ability to daven all day. But a situation where you were like, no, I'm not davening, and then later on you decide, okay, no, maybe I'll change. I'll do now. Like that's not what we're talking about. Rav Ashi Dekanami, I have a proof to you that this is in fact correct. Because look at what the Brisa said is diktani batel v'loikatani to shmamina. If you recall, the first Brisa that we discussed was to v'loispal arvis mispal shachar shtayim. Right? If somebody made a mistake and they didn't do arvis, so they mispal b'shachar time, they make two chakras. But here in this situation. In this situation, when we say mu'uvas lo yuchal liska and zeh shebita kriyash mashal arvis, the kriyash shal shachar, it's tefillah shal arvis, tefillah shal shachar. We use the lashon of not ta, we use the lashon of bitel. Right? He was mevatel it. He deliberately decided he's not doing it. Whatever his reasons were, he decided he's not doing it. Somebody who deliberately doesn't do something, so he is going, in fact, to he is in fact going to going to not have the ability to make it up by the rest of the day. He loses the time. Now we have to do the Taisasin over here. The Taisasin Tov lo yispal arvis mispal b'shachar shtayim. So Taisa asks, I don't understand. We're going to come up a Gemara in this coming week and discuss whether or not tefillas arvis is a reshus or a chayva. Taisa asks, we were saying that if you forgot arvis, you could do 2 shachras. It's been time of Rav come on tefillas arvis reshus. Later on, we're going to say that according to Rav, Ma'ariv is a reshus. The kaimel and kavasei b'isur, and we hold in fact like Rav. By Isur, we discussed this Gemara before, and we discussed this machlekes of Rav and Rabbi Yechon, who you go with. But if we go with Rav when it comes to Isur, that means Shmuel when it comes to Mammon, etc. So that means we should pass like Rav. Rav holds that tefillas arvis is a reshus. So if tefillas arvis is a reshus, then what do you mean you're making it up in the morning? It's a reshus. You don't have to do it. Void kash with Amla Kaman Tovla Ispal Yalvi Yavai Belayla in Machzir Moisam Mishum Name Makashin Sechadish Belay. Once if somebody forgot to say Yalvi Yavai by Ma'ariv, right? The first day of Rosh Chodesh, they forgot to say Yalvi Yavai. We don't make him repeat the Shemona S, right? Why not? Because we're not Makadosh the Chodesh at night. So since you're not Makadosh the Chodesh at night, we say it's okay. You don't have to go back and recite the Shemona S. By day is different, but by night you don't have to go back and recite it. Says Taisus, "V'lomalei high time typically the tefillas arvis rishos." Says I don't understand why when we have a situation like this where there's a qualitative difference in the type of tefillas that we're doing, then we should point that out. In other words, why is it Taisus is asking that when somebody forgot Rosh Chodesh, he forgot Yal V'Yaveh at night? That you say, oh, he doesn't have to go back because we're not Mekadosh the Chodesh at night. Why do you say he doesn't have to go back? Because Tfilas Arvis is a Rishus. Why are we saying that by Tfilas Arvis you have the right, if you forgot, to daven Ma'ariv, not b'mezid? You forgot. Whatever, you came home, you fell asleep, whatever it was, you forgot. So why are we saying that by Shachas you could do 2 Shachas? It says Taisus, it's a Rishus. If it's just a Rishus, then what do you mean you're making it up by a shach? Shachas you're mechayev to do. Why are you going to have a additional davening for a rishus type of tefillah?
have the Chodesh be non-Mekadosh and Mekadosh the Chodesh at night, and then the Rosh Chodesh doesn't exist at all. There's no reason to say Yalav Yaveh if you miss Yalav. But even if Arvis is the Rishut, there's still Arvis. I'm saying it still exists. That's mine.
So let's see what Taisa says. Taisa says a little bit like you. It says Yeshleim in the hard that I mean in Tfilas Avos Rishus. What does Rav mean when Rav says Tfilas Avos Rishus? Does it mean like it's like totally optional? No. Says Taisa Hainu Lagabe Mitzvah Cheres. What does it mean Tfilas Avos Rishus? You have something else to do. You have other mitzvahs that you have to do, and those things are time pressing. So then you do those things. Does that mean that that's when we say, okay, just don't die. Go do the other things that are more important. Avalachinam in Lolavatos. So Tesis is making a fundamental understanding of Tfilas Avos Rishus that's different than what you might have thought. You might have thought that Tfilas Avos Rishus is literally Rishus. You could choose to daven Ma'ariv, but not choose to daven Ma'ariv. So it says, no. You don't have that kind of ability. No. Rather, you must daven Ma'ariv, but we will be much more amenable to stopping to daven Ma'ariv if there's some other mitzvah, some other issue that you have to do. However, after a period of that day, you cannot be making up any tefillas whatsoever. If somebody was matal any tefillas, of course you can't be mash from that. Fine. Next tesis. So this again, the takeaway from this tesis is what is rishus? Rishus doesn't mean you have like just total freedom to do whatever you want. No, you have to daven ma'ariv. You don't have to if you have other important things to take care of. Ibayel, who says tesis tov about tfilas mincha. One of someone forgot to daven mincha. That says tesis. Why don't we talk about in this Gemara of somebody who forgot to daven musaf? We don't discuss that. Why don't we discuss that? Isn't that an interesting situation? Somebody forgot to daven musaf. The Havvada ain't a mispal ba'arvis, because for sure you don't make up musaf by ma'ariv. Why not? The hechikari as a karbanis. What are you going to talk about the karbanis? The karav is my musaf. The gamma tikna shev brachot musaf el misham v'nishal parm sivasenu. Was that vade avers mani bata karbani? Musaf says you do say avers mani bata karbani. If somebody forgot to daven musaf, you do not make it up by mincha. Again, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have until Zayin Shaz for musaf, but according to the rabbis, you have until all day, so you could always daven musaf. The question would be if somebody forgot to daven musaf on Shabbos, and now they remembered. So normally you have the next tefillah afterwards to be able to make it up. So do you daven two ma'arivs? Tes says absolutely not. You do not daven two ma'arivs for musaf. There's no making up for musaf. We're going to get to the nice, very juicy text on Amud Beis, which goes into more detail on other common questions like this. Okay, continues the Gemara. We're now at the top of Chavav Amud Beis. Tana Rabbanan. What happens if somebody forgot to daven mincha on erev Shabbos? So on Shabbos, meaning he forgot, meaning he was busy, meaning not a situation where he walks in after Chadaidi, right? The situation where somebody made a mistake and they didn't daven mincha on erev Shabbos for whatever reason was. So the halacha is they could daven two Shemana Esreis on Shabbos, right? Remember, there's going to be a different type of Shemana Esrei because your Shemana Esrei for mincha is a Shemana Esrei of 18 brachas. Shemana Esrei for Shabbos is 7 brachas. So this is one of the points I'm bringing out over here. Right, it's a separate day and it's a separate type of tefillah. Right, what happens if he forgot to daven mincha on Shabbos? He could daven two ma'arivs on Matzoi Shabbos. Again, it will be very different Shemana Esrei. Right now, you daven 18 brachas. Mavdil barishayna ve'ena mavdil b'shniya. You do make havdalah in the first Shemana Esrei, and you do not do havdalah in the second Shemana Esrei. Meaning, you say atachayna in the second Shemana in the first Shemana Esrei. I'm sorry, which is for the current tefillah, and you do not say in the second one. V'mhivdil b'shniya v'lehivdil barishayna. And if you made the havdalah and chayna adas only in the second Shemana Esrei, not in the first Shemana Esrei, then shniya also, then the second one counts for him as his tefillah of ma'ariv. Also, but the first one doesn't count for him as anything. Meaning, it's not counting as the hashlama, right, for what you missed, because that comes after the current one, and the current one you didn't say avdol, so it doesn't count. Only the second one counted, and that only counts for your current prayer obligation, and therefore you're still missing out for the previous one.
That's interesting, because you say the first one, and you miss it, you don't have to repeat it. If you didn't.
Okay, that Taisus. Okay, we're gonna get. I said juicy. Okay, so continues the Gemara. So lememra, does that mean to say? Says the Gemara, the kevan delay avdol b'kamaisa keman delay tzalidami umadrinalay. Are you saying that means to say that if somebody was not mavdil in the first Ma'ariv, that it's like he didn't daven, and we make him go back and say the Shemana Esrei again? Vermino, I'll ask you a stira. Tov, somebody forgot to say Mashiach when I get him in Tchesa Mason. And he forgot to say the same Talmud of Bracha in Baruch Aleinu. That loch is Machzir and Oyser. Then he has to go back to daven. Havdalah b'Chen Adas ain't Machzir and Oyser. If somebody forgot to say Havdalah and Chen Adas, he does not have to go back in the Mashiach Alayim because he's going to make Havdalah by Havdalah. Says more kasha. It's a good question. In other words, it sounds like a steer between these two. On the one hand, it sounded like from the previous situation that if somebody forgot to daven, forgot to include in Atachayin, and he forgot to include Atachan and Tanu, so the halacha was that it doesn't count for him at all. Therefore, he has to say a second one, which when we mentioned that there was no second one, he wasn't forgetting anything, but it's a situation where he didn't daven, they would have to repeat the davening. And yet we have another verse that says you don't have to. Somebody forgot to say Adachan and Tanu Shmanesh, he doesn't have to go back and repeat the davening. Why? Because of the fact that he's able to say it on the case when he says Havdalah. Taisus asks, look at the small Taisus of Kasha. Taisus asks, we're going to learn later on Lama Gimel, that there were different gezeres that they had. Sometimes they used to daven in the Ma'ariv, they would say Adachan and Tanu, and that would be their Havdalah. And sometimes they would say Havdalah on the kais, and it depends on when they were wealthy. When they were wealthy, they said Havdalah on the kais. They didn't say Nishman Esrei. And when they were poor, they said Havdalah on Shman Esrei, and they didn't have enough wine to be able to make Havdalah. So Tai says, why don't you just say that this was talking about one's before the Gezerah, one's after the Gezerah? Tai says, no, we don't know that they made these kind of brices in between the Gezeras. No. Tai doesn't want that as an answer. Fine. We have a big Taisus over here. We don't have a lot of time, but let's try to do this Taisus of Tov V'lo Hispalo. What is Taisus asking about? Taisus is as follows. Kasav Rabbeinu Yehuda im Tov V'lo Hisker Rosh Chodesh b'Mincha. What happens if somebody forgot to say Yal V'Yavai by Mincha, right, on Rosh Chodesh? So now it's Ma'ariv, it's going to be a new day. It's not Rosh Chodesh anymore. What do you do? Kasav Rabbeinu Yehuda im Tov V'lo Hisker Rosh Chodesh b'Mincha Yispal Oy B'Layla. The Lama Yispal Oy. Says Taisus, you should not daven again. Do not. This is not a comparable situation. Why is it not a comparable situation? Says Taisus. Why? Because he already davened the full Shemon Esrei. Right when he said Mincha, he davened the full Shemon Esrei. He just forgot Yal V'Yavim. What's the gain that he's going to have when he davens now Ma'ariv by Motzei Rosh Chodesh? You're not saying anymore Yal V'Yavim because it's already over Rosh Chodesh. So all you're getting is what? Saying another Shemon Esrei. You already said the Shemon Esrei. All you were missing then was Rosh Chodesh. But you got your Yud Ches. So now you're going to say Yud Ches without Rosh Chodesh, because it's no longer Rosh Chodesh, as a hashlama to that. But you already said the 18 benedictions. To say it 18 benedictions again is not gaining you anything more, which is very different than our situations where you forgot to daven, where you didn't actually daven. Now you're making it up. You're actually saying the brachos. Continues Taisvis. It's not comparable to our situation over here of what Tovla is about Mincha Shabbos and Mispal Avos B'Chol Shtayim Perish Ochel. You daven two Shemon Esrei and Motzei Shabbos of Chol Mishum Shlo Yispal Klal. Because over here you didn't daven at all by Mincha, you forgot. You're gaining here the tefillah of the Shemon Esrei when you daven by Motzei Shabbos. Officially ask Shal Shabbos, even though you're not mentioning Shabbos at all, but you didn't do any Shemon Esrei on Shabbos by Mincha. You forgot, so now it's better to do something. The time of fractates v'aloi hu mispal yosim masher yuchiv v'lispal shloi hayoloi lispal kiyam time brachas mispal yud ches. But you're davening so much, 18 brachas, you only have to daven 7. Says b'kach ein locha shegam b'Shabbos hayusah hadin sheispal kol yud ches actually it's shrichum mibnei ateireach. Really, on Shabbos, we're going to see soon, have a din that you could daven 18 benedictions, but we say, no, we don't want to be matric people too much, so therefore we make it into 7. So therefore, the fact that you're davening 18 for a tefillah for Shabbos is not a problem at all. Somebody says, he davens on Shabbos 18 benedictions. wrongly. He davens 18 benedictions on Shabbos, but his Gishal Shabbos, and he did not mention Shabbos. Right? He davened the full Shemana Esrei. Nira says Taisvis. Nira the what? The Lamotzi Shabbos lo yispal shtayim, right? That Lamotzi Shabbos you shouldn't daven two Shemona Esreis. The Kvar Hispal Yud Ches Brachos because he already did 18 benedictions. So if somebody on Shabbos daven 18 benedictions by Mincha, he should not daven again Motzei Shabbos because he already said a full Mincha. As we said, you don't have a requirement to daven on Motzei Shabbos a second time to make up for it, because really on Shabbos you should have davened 18 benedictions, but we didn't on Matriach, so therefore we davened 7. I'm not doing the rest of the Tais, but Tais brings down the Rif, who disagrees. Continues the Gemara. Says the Gemara, we are by the word Kasha, which is about 10 lines down. Itmar. Itmar Rabbi Yossi, here we have a fundamental machlokes in the nature of tefillah. Itmar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, Amar tefillah of his tiknum, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Amar tefillah teneged tminin tiknum. Where the tefillah set up, where the Shemana Esrei set up, keneged the avis because the avis daven, or keneged the tminin because of the karbonos that were brought. Tani consider Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, Tani consider Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Have rayas to both. Tani consider Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina. What's our raya to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina? Avram taking tefillah shachas. We know that the tefillahs were keneged avis tiknum because we know that Avram was taking tefillah shachas. What is the proof that Avram was talking the tefillah of Shachar? Avram woke up in the morning and went to the place where he had stood when he had davened to God. And Amida el tefillah, and Amida is tefillah. Because we say the word tefillah with Pinchas being Amen. So therefore, we said when Avram went, that was the place where the holy davened for Shadaim. So that means it was tefillah, and you see he's getting up in the morning to do so. Yitzchak was metagen tefillas mincha. Shnei Amar, right? What the pasuk says, Yitzchak losuach basadeh lefnei or ve'ein sichel tefillah. Yitzchak went out losuach basadeh. What does losuach basadeh mean? The Rashbam very famous. He says losuach basadeh is like we said about the Paras Vayera. Where did the Hagar put her son? Tachas achar hasichim, right? V'chol siach hasudeh terem yitzmach. Right? What is siach? As the bushes. Yisrael went out to the fields. He went out to go see how his fields were doing. Not to go on anything to do with mincha. That is the Pashup Shad. Nevertheless, as we are saying, why did he go out in the fields at the end of the day? It wasn't to go talk to his workers, but rather he went to go daven that the tefillah for an ani is he's going to be throwing out his words to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So therefore, you see, Yisrael was going out to daven. Tes asks, I don't understand. If you look at the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, it uses Vayezi Yisrael Asua Basadet to be the proof that it means davening. Tes Rosh has it a little bit differently, but basically the same answer is okay. Sometimes we do like this, sometimes we do like that, but we can't ask any more questions on that for the moment. Continues the Gemara. I should also mention that there's another Tes of Yitzchak Tefillah Mincha, but we know the Gemara Yuma tells us that Avram was davening Mishachri Kasli. Once it started to get the afternoon. So Tes answers that, okay, maybe that was a situation where after Yitzchak was metagen tefillas mincha, Avram also davened at a later point as well, but he was metagen tefillas shachas. What about Yaakov? Yaakov Avinu was metagen tefillah of Arvis. What does the pasuk say by Yaakov Avinu? The pasuk says, because he got to the place and he slept over there, and so you see the word pigia with tefillah, so therefore that means that when it says that it means he davened there. Taisha asks a bomb question, and Yaakov Tikin Tefillas Arvis. Taisha says, but I don't understand. If you recall the Gemara in Chulin tells us in Tzadi Aleph that if you remember, Yaakov got to Charan, right, and then he had a Charata. How could he go past by the Makam HaMikdash? Would be in the future the Mikdash and not daven, so he goes back, right? And what happens when he goes back? He davens. And then Hashem says, what? Is this tzaddik going to be part of Lina? Is he going to leave here now and go again on the road? And miyad bo Hashem, as Hashem brings the sun down, closes off the day, so Yaakov will be forced to stay there. So what does it come out, says Taishas? According to what the Gemara in Chulin is learning, when did Yaakov actually daven Ma'ariv? By day. So if he daven Ma'ariv by day, we're having an hour ride that he daven Ma'ariv by night. So what's Taishas' answer? Taishas says, It's great. The Yafa minik shalanu. The Adarabba Toiv l'espelin b'oyem ksas. It's good to daven Ma'ariv by day. You see, it's our proof to our minik that we daven earlier. And you remember, on that base that we discussed this as well. Okay, so this would be our this will be our first part of the Gemara. Let's just finish quickly. According to the opinions of Rabbi Shimon Levi, that tefillas are connected the karbanis, not connected the avos. So it says the Gemara, "Tani consider Rabbi Shimon Levi, Lema Amu tefillas hashachar chatzos, sharitam shashachar kar v'holech al chatzos." Why is tefillah shachar until chatzos? Because the tam shashachar would go until chatzos. We don't add arba shas. Sharitam shashachar kar v'holech al arba shas. And you only bring the carbon tam until the 4 hours in the day. U'mnei Amu tefillas mincha ad ha'erev, sharitam shabin arbaim kar v'holech al erev. Right? Why is mincha till the evening? Because that's when you can bring the carbon mincha. I'm sorry, the carbon tamid shall average the carbon tamid. The second carbon tamid you can bring until the evening. No, you can only bring the tamid of ben arbaim ad plag hamincha. You can only bring it until plag hamincha. So he says a much earlier period. What do you mean when we say the Ma'ariv doesn't have any specific time at all? Remember the Mishnah tells us that the Ivam will be brought on the Mizbech all night, and it's not going to be Erev that we're not already eaten up by the Mizbech, to be brought Krev Mahalchim Kal Laila. When Imam Mushal Musaf Kalyam, why do you say that Musaf have all day? Share carbon Shal Musaf and carbon Kalyam, because you can literally bring the carbon Musaf all day. Budayim at Sheva Shas, share carbon Musaf carbon Harlech at Sheva Shas. And the Tfilas Musaf could go only until 7 hours according to Rabbi Huda. All right, we'll stop over here.